Yesterday, some people in my comments asked if I had watched ShoeOnHead, a popular YouTuber's latest video on the downfall of the Democrats. And you know what? I hadn't. But if there's one thing I like, it's someone with enough critical thinking skills to criticize their own side and hold them to account. And since Shue herself is a leftist, I decided to tune in and I want to talk about what she said. First, I'm Hannah Cox with Base Politics. Welcome to my channel where I bring you my politically homeless takes on politics and culture. Before we dive in today, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and of course, ring that notification bell so you never miss one of my episodes. So you guys, full disclosure, I did not initially like Shue because honestly, she was mean to me on Twitter one time and it hurt my feelings. But you know what? After watching her content, I changed my mind. She's actually pretty funny. And honestly, who cares if she hates libertarians? We all do. No one hates libertarians more than another libertarian. So Shue, I get it. Now, her video is almost 40 minutes long. Obviously, I can't dissect everything she said here, but let's roll the first clip I want to talk about.
Young men weren't the only ones who came out in droves for Trump. Nearly everyone did. The madman took everything, every swing state, Pennsylvania, Georgia. My home state, New York, was closer to flipping red than Florida was to flipping blue. Turns out Dick Cheney as Brat wasn't the best message to win over voters. Dems did so bad it really had me thinking, damn, did we steal that election? So what happened here? How did it go so wrong? Is it too late for the Democratic Party, or can they turn this around? Will the Democrats learn from this, or will they double down and get worse? In this video, I'm going to go through all the excuses and the copes the Democrats and the broader left are coming up with to avoid accountability. Read some silly tweets, watch some silly news clips, and even give the Democratic Party some advice on how to win 2028. Don't worry, Republicans watching this. They won't listen.
They won't listen should absolutely be the takeaway here. This is one thing that has astounded me over the past couple of weeks, watching Democrats react to this tremendous loss that they faced and coming up with either completely wrong ideas and mentalities for what caused the loss and what they need to do to get better, or just denying it altogether. I often say that politics is the art of persuasion, and if you're not interested in persuading people, you need to get out of the ring. But unfortunately, I think the Democratic Party became captured to its own popularity. They took over the higher institutions, they took over academia, they took over the media, they took over Hollywood, and they really started to think that they didn't have to convince people anymore, right? They were like the cool kids. They had SNL, they had the comedians, like virtually everything in pop culture and all of our institutions were falling in line. And so for a very long time, they really didn't have to persuade people because they were the only voice in the room. That's until social media came along, and with it, independent journalism and actually the ability for other people to weigh in and have a larger microphone and begin to push back. And it's like that book that I had to read in business school, Who Moved My Cheese? That's all about when businesses change, when the market changes, when the environment changes, business leaders who refuse to learn new ways of doing things and adapt and therefore go extinct. That's what's happening with the Democratic Party. Somebody moved their cheese, and instead of recognizing that and figuring out a different pathway in the maze to relocate where the cheese is now, they are dying at the dead end where the cheese used to exist in the maze, and they refuse to acknowledge that even as they are starving. And Shue did a really, really good job. I mean, better than virtually any Democrat I can think of other than Bernie Sanders and probably AOC at acknowledging this sentiment and mentality on the left and actually calling it out. Watch.
You idiots. You morons. You imbeciles. Kamala Harris? Really? That's who you threw up there? The one who dropped out before Iowa? The one who got blown the f*** out by Tulsi Gabbard? Why didn't you hold a primary? Aren't you the f***ing saviors of democracy? Where the f*** was the democracy? Oh, big congratulations to Tim Walz on being the first white male DEI hire. It didn't f***ing work. The DNC completely neutered that guy, reduced him to this weird token white man. Hello, fellow men, I too play football. But hey, men weren't the only demographic you completely dropped the ball with. Trump made incredible gains with women, too. Oh, and all those never-Trumpers you tried to court, the people who like the old, respectable GOP. You know, the old, respectable GOP that led us into a pointless war that cost us trillions of dollars and millions of lives, but were at least nice on Twitter. That GOP. Yeah, they didn't come out and vote for your ass either. So you got Liz Cheney to tag along for what? For fucking what?
So much to dissect there, but I love that she calls out the fact that so many Democrats are continuously trying to tell us that Kamala lost because America is filled with racist and bigots and misogynists and apparently Nazis. Be so for real. No, it's not. And the fact that you keep trying to insist that makes us all hate you. People do not respond well to being told that they suck. I don't know what your end goal is here in trying to convince Americans that they all are just evil and terrible and that therefore they should come and support you. Like, this is just common sense that is not going to attract anybody to your movement. It's not going to attract the people who actually are bigots and racist and sexist, and it's not going to attract the people that you are maligning as those things either. Most Americans are good people. Most Americans do not care if the person running is white, Black, or Asian, and they don't care if it's a man or a woman. They care if they are receiving messages from that candidate that indicate to them that that person actually wants to stand for them, that that person actually likes them, and that that person has some kind of an agenda that's going to benefit them. Kamala didn't have any of those things because she was a trash candidate. She was a trash candidate who would never have been the nominee had you freaks actually had an election. Like, I'll never get over it. I've been calling this out on my show for weeks, but the fact that they ran around for 4 years talking about democracy and then rigged their own election yet again, I'll get back to this in a minute, but yet again is infuriating. And it was a slap in the face to all Americans. You basically said, we think you're stupid enough to pull this off and you're not going to call our bluff. Kamala was unlikable. Most people do not perceive her to be very smart. She didn't have very good ideas. She continued to run on the failed ideas of Joe Biden that people desperately want a break from. And she was representative of the establishment. And if you cannot read the room right now to understand it is not a moment for establishment picks, I can't help you. You don't have two brain cells to rub together. The fact that these people went and got the Cheneys, some of the most loathsome people in our entire political system, the OG Hitlers, right? This is who the left was calling Hitler not even 20 years ago when I was a kid and coming up in our political system. And you know what? They at least had a leg to stand on in some regards when it came to Cheney and his murderous, disgusting foreign policy views that his daughter Liz has continued to perpetrate. And one thing I can say about Donald Trump, while I am not a fan, is that at the very least, he, on the heels of Ron Paul, came in and revolutionized the right post the Bush era and transformed it from being a neocon establishment party to a party that is much closer to being an anti-war coalition. And that is a very, very good thing. And the fact that you do not see the left acknowledging that or celebrating it, and now instead they have become the very pro-war, very pro-interventionist party, tells you everything you need to know about them. The fact that they were comfortable siding up to the Cheneys is remarkable. Not only have they come completely unmoored from the principles that the left used to espouse, but they have gotten into bed with some of the most corrupt and sinister people in our political system. And they did that somehow thinking that that would make Republicans who don't like Trump want to support them. I'll raise my hand here. I'm a former Republican who does not support Trump, and nothing could have turned me off faster than seeing these idiots walk around with the Cheneys. Now, in the middle of her video, which I don't have time to fully cover here, Shue gets into the left's pandering and preaching to the various identity groups they felt entitled to, from sending Bill Clinton in to hammer into the Muslim community in Michigan the need to support the left, to sending Obama in to basically call black men sexist and call them out for not supporting Kamala, to their absurd antics trying to convince men in the 11th hour that they had some kind of place on the left and were welcome there by merely appointing Tim Walz as the vice president nominee. It was bizarre. It was inauthentic. It's insulting that they expected anybody to fall for that. And ultimately, that just gets back to the entitlement that I think they feel. They don't feel like they should have to actually convince people to support them. They don't feel they should actually have to have solutions or answers to the problems that these people care about the most. They just think they are entitled to the coalition that they used to have. And they were gobsmacked when it fell apart around them. The next thing she wants to talk about, though, I love talking about this subject, is the left's fixation on the Joe Rogan factor in their loss, which has not only been like quite funny to watch since they ran him off in the first place, it's also been extremely obtuse because they don't seem to recognize, like, guys, you already have independent media. Like ShoeOnHead alone has 2 million viewers. You've got people like Hassan Piker and the Young Turks with tens of millions of subscribers. You have the mainstream media on lock. You control Hollywood. Like, this idea that you didn't have this one podcaster and that's why you lost the election is phenomenally stupid.
We need a liberal Joe Rogan. We need a liberal Joe Rogan, ASAP. We need a left-wing Rogan. Democrats are going to keep losing until they have their own Joe Rogan, their own Elon Musk, until they create their own alternative to Fox News. People saying Harris should have done Joe Rogan are missing the point. That wouldn't have helped her. Liberals need to build their own Joe Rogan. Oh my god, we need a liberal Joe Rogan. You had a liberal Joe Rogan. His name was Joe Rogan. But he was too edgy, too problematic, said too many no-no words, talked to too many no-no people about no-no topics, and in 2020, when Bernie Sanders went on his podcast and Joe endorsed him, the Democrat journalist class freaked the f*** out and smeared him for weeks. The left can't have a Joe Rogan, because everything that makes Joe Rogan, is not allowed on the left. Kamala Harris ditched Joe Rogan podcast interview over progressive backlash fears. So Joe Rogan was too problematic? But Liz Cheney was fine? Listen, you don't need a leftist Joe Rogan or liberal Joe Rogan. You just need leftists and liberals to go on Joe Rogan. And that means not giving a shit about being canceled by your own movement.
She gets this so right. It's not that they need to have their own media outlets. It's not that we need more DNC propaganda. It is that they have to get over this mentality of not being willing to go on Joe Rogan. And I would take it a step further and say that the factors that made Kamala Harris nervous to go on Joe Rogan are what ultimately have to change. This party has become marked by a bunch of Karens, a bunch of Dolores Umbridges. Like, these are rule sticklers. They're like the annoying like girl who always wants to lead the group down to the lunch hallway. They are the people who are obsessed with rules and upholding the establishment and basically ensuring that there are not free thinkers, that everybody falls into line. Like, this is a personality type that you have not only begun to attract to the left, you have let them push out everybody else who might be attracted to the left, because nobody wants to be around this type of person. You can't have your own Joe Rogans, and your people cannot successfully go on Joe Rogan's show, because what makes Joe Rogan's show work is that he is open-minded. He is a free thinker. He doesn't mind being silly or crude to be funny sometimes. He doesn't mind occasionally being wrong. He doesn't mind going against the status quo. And those are things that currently fly in the face of DNC dogma. That's why they ran him off in the first place. I know cancel culture has been talked about ad nauseum, but it is indicative of the deeper problem within the left, where again, they think that they can propaganda people and censor people and continue to feel entitled to dominate the conversation. They are incapable of having free thought, of having debate, of having to actually persuade people to think along the lines that they want them to. And until that changes, it doesn't matter how much they astroturf the internet, it's going to fall flat, because people are sick of the virtue signaling. They can sniff out the inauthenticity. And by the way, they're already doing this. Like, they have paid so many people on TikTok and other social media platforms to come in and push Kamala propaganda over the past couple months. And it's been very, very easy to tell when it's happening, okay? Even when it's somebody who's like a traditional leftist influencer who just happens to have a lot of followers, but all of a sudden they're using very specific talking points that sound exactly like the talking points of the next leftist influencer coming across. Like, these people aren't smart, okay? Nobody thinks that these are like super sharp, deep thinkers, and yet all of a sudden they have the same beliefs and talking points and narratives that they're delivering around the DNC. Like, come on. The reason alternative media and independent media is so popular is because people actually want to hear from people who have something different to offer to the conversation. And currently, the left does not right now. They're like a malfunctioning robot that's just regurgitating the same broken talking points as they were 10 years ago. And I think that this is best seen with their ongoing obsession with the Obamas, which is actually very interesting to observe. Because for sure, the Obama era is the last time the Democrats were on top, and Obama injected more enthusiasm onto the left and into their party than anything that's happened in recent memory. He was a once-in-a-lifetime politician. I thought he was dead ass wrong on just about everything, but even I would watch the State of the Unions and be like, oh my gosh, he's brilliant. I mean, he had this way of like sucking you in, you know, he was so charismatic. He was such a good speaker. He had such an optimism about him. He really came across as a stand-up guy. It was very, very easy to fall for Obama. And many people did. But you have to remember that Obama was not the establishment pick when he came out of nowhere either. Hillary Clinton was actually supposed to be in the wings for that election, and then he surged past her and became the nominee. And he did that because he was a populist, okay? This is when I peg the era of populism actually beginning in the United States was with Obama. And he came in promising big structural change, promising hope, promising a new way forward. He had very populist ideas, right? Us against the elite. We're going to come in and stand up for the working man. And he had a lot of like left-wing socialist type ideas and policies to go along with that. And a lot of people who don't understand basic economics fell for it. They went along with it, particularly people in minority communities. They really fell for this identitarian politics, this notion that, oh, he looks like me, therefore he's going to do a good job and represent me more effectively than somebody who does not look like me. And then that all came crashing down on their heads because Obama sold out the minute he stepped into the Oval Office. He became the most generic establishment president I've seen in my lifetime. I think he is virtually indistinguishable from George W. Bush. If you put their policies side by side on a piece of paper, the vast majority of the American population would not be able to tell you which paper belonged to which president. And it was a colossal failure. He destroyed our economy. He bailed out the banks. He punished the little guy. He amped up the surveillance state. He amped up our forever wars. He amped up the spending. Everything about it failed. Trump is an overcorrection to Obama. And I have been saying that since 2016. There was always going to be backlash to what Obama did, and rightfully so. But oftentimes, the way that gravity works is when you have a correction, you have an overcorrection. And that is what we have seen with Trump. But it's very, very important to remember that the coalition Trump currently has supporting him is much more reminiscent to the one that supported Obama than what the left currently has left. And that's because the DNC, after Obama, has now come to be seen, rightfully so, as the establishment party. So them continuing to trot Obama out here and have him lecture people, it just flies right over their head that he is actually your least effective messenger at this point at getting those minorities and those people who have left the DNC to come back into your coalition. He was popular for the same reasons that Trump is popular because he presented himself as a wrecking ball and a change agent, but because he failed, that momentum moved to the right.
After the election, one of the only politicians I've seen who is actively trying to understand why people voted the way that they did is AOC. When I met her, I whispered into her ear, "Take the pronouns out of your bio." And she did. My influence. Anyway, after the election, AOC found out that a ton of people voted for her down ballot, but also voted for Trump for president on the same ticket. Curious, she took to her Instagram to ask people why they did that. And these were some of their answers. I feel like Trump and you are both real. It's real simple. Trump and you care for the working class. But also you signified change. Trump signified change. I've said lately, Trump sounds more like you. Loved ones say you're both straightforward and challenging corruption and broken government. Because it's different than what has been the last 4 years. Something had to go. I feel that you both are outsiders compared to the rest of DC and less establishment. Voted Trump, but I like you and Bernie. I don't trust either party establishment politicians. The replies, of course, were full of people like, these idiots, these morons, these fools. Most depressing shit I've ever seen. These people sound dumb as hell. Such staggering ignorance and stupidity. The median voter. I hate the median voter. I want to destroy the median voter. Why is the median voter this stupid? I hate the median voter. How could this be real? Americans really are the dumbest gentlemen on earth. This is giving me a headache. I don't understand the median voter. Listen, it's really not that hard to understand. It's populism, honey. It's why when I went to January 6th and told a bunch of boomers I was a Bernie supporter, a ton of them reacted like this.
I think he's one of the few honest people that I think he's honest.
He beat Hillary Clinton, and he would have beat Joe Biden, too.
People hate empty suits that sound like they're constantly reading from a script. They want someone who tells it like it is. Someone who fights for the everyman, or at least sounds like they do.
How are you feeling about Trump's upcoming presidency, Trump 2?
I voted for him.
Oh, you like AOC?
Yeah.
Did you vote for her?
Yeah. Remember one thing about why people voted for Trump. They want change.
The average American voter despises the establishment and will vote for anyone who promises to destroy it. And the fact that none of you understand this is a big reason why you lost and will continue to lose until you do understand it. Capiche? The beatings will continue until the populism improves.
I also saw AOC post these responses to her online, and I thought, if anybody's going to be the first female president that's currently in the ring right now, it might be her, because she gets it. She actually is connected with her base in a way that the vast majority of politicians are not right now and never can be. But she shares that with Trump. And I want to point out that one thing that people have always told me that they like about Trump is that he genuinely loves America. I hear this all the time. And I'm like, that's your bar for president? That they genuinely like the country they're in? But yes, that has genuinely become the bar, because they recognize that the vast majority of the government and the institutions within it hate them, hate the country, hate the median voter, hate the American public. And you can see it in the very elitist responses that AOC got when she published this information. If you hate the median voter, if you look down on them, you think they're stupid, you despise them, how in the actual F do you ever expect people to believe that you will be the person who can come in and represent them and make their lives better? Most people do not vote on policy. I get that. I have had to accept that a long time ago. It's why people will sit there and tell me that they're capitalists, they support limited government, they like individual liberty, and then be diehard Trump nuts. And it's why people will tell me that they're anti-war and they want to help the poor and they hate monopolies and they hate corporate welfare, and then simp right along for the Democratic Party. At best, American politics is based in feelings, it's based in emotion, it's based in sentiment. Maybe voters have an issue or two that they actually care about. Usually, even then, it is a surface level understanding of that public policy. But what I will say about the American people is that they are smart enough to recognize that handouts don't work and that they run counter to the American mentality of rugged individualism. More people still want to work than don't. And so even though the left is out here, I've heard Nancy Pelosi and multiple other leaders in the DNC trying to make this point that, like, we do speak to the working class and we offer this program and we offer this handout and we were going to give this subsidy. That's not what the American people were looking for. They at least, I think, understand enough to know that those kinds of handouts and the reckless spending that we have lived with and printing of dollars to go along with it over the past 4 years has led to the higher prices and inflation and harder economic circumstances that they are living with to this day. And they recognize that getting a one-time handout from the government is not going to fix their lives. What will actually fix their lives is getting rid of the systems that continue to take and take and take from them while leaving them with fewer and fewer options to pursue their version of the American dream. Shue is obviously a left-wing populist. She says as much in her video multiple times. And as I said yesterday in my video, there is a populist movement at foot in America right now. And I just have to say, some idiot tried to argue with me about that in my comments and be like, nationalism's not populism. That's just your opinion. It's not just my opinion, sir. This is political theory 101, and just because you haven't studied it does not mean that I am pulling it out of my ass. Nationalism is inherently linked to populism. And if that ruffles your feather, maybe examine your relationship to nationalism, because it sucks. In fact, I would actually be really, really curious to see a video from Shoe talking about the reasons that she dislikes Trump. I don't know what she would say, but for most populists, if you were to examine, let's say, Bernie Sanders' policies and Trump's, you'd see a lot more overlap between those two candidates than you would see between, let's say, a Trump and a Ron Paul. So I'm often curious when I hear people say like that they're left-wing populists or that they like Bernie or they like AOC, what makes them not like Trump, and if it's just the media manipulating them into not liking him and they haven't truly examined the policies that he's pushing, or if it's more about his personality and all of the problems around him as an individual, which I would very much understand. But either way, I think she's mostly right in her conclusions here, even though I don't like them. I'm a huge critic of populism. But had the Democratic Party not kneecapped Bernie Sanders in 2016, which is the other rigging of the elections I was referring to earlier in this video, he likely would have been a much better competitor for Trump. I used to be in a lot of different like Facebook groups back when I was an organizer and doing more grassroots work. And I actually watched some of the groups I were in that were like Bernie Sanders organizations change their name and become Trump organizations throughout the 2016 election. It was really crazy to watch. And at first it made no sense to me. But then as I dug deeper and deeper into both populist sentiments and also the policies that they were pushing, it actually all started to add up. Given those factors and that we have been in a populist movement since I would say around 2008 or really leading up to it even, it really is so moronic that the Democratic Party thought they were going to nominate state puppets like Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris to counter this movement. And to be clear, they did manipulate both elections in order to ensure that those women were the nominees, which was not really what their base wanted. And I think that has a lot more to do with why they lost those elections versus the fact that those candidates happen to be women. All right, guys, I'll put a pin in it there. Let me know your thoughts. Is there something I missed or Shoe missed? What are the factors you think were most determinative for why Trump overwhelmingly won and why so many prior Obama voters have moved over to the right? I hope you like this episode. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to my channel if you've not already, and if you want even more content, you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok.